There he is. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of Oregon City Council for August 5th, 2024. The time is 7 p.m. If you would join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Snyder, if you would take a roll call of council, please.
Mrs. Ackerman? Here. Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Pauloff?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Solander?
Here.
Mr. Wallensack?
Here. Thank you, council. Note that all 7 members are here tonight, although there's no requirement at a committee of the whole. I also want to note that also joining us this evening is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Mazer, Interim Clerk of Council Josette Snyder, Law Director Melissa Propora, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, Assistant Chief Mark Mullins, and Finance Director Nick Roman. Council, moving into our agenda this evening, we'll lead off with persons and delegations. We do have 2 people signed in to speak tonight. And just as a reminder, we'll ask you to keep remarks to about 3 or 4 minutes. As we go through, one of us will give you kind of a high sign at that time. We'll give you about 30 to 60 seconds to wrap up. First person we have is Steve Dunaway. You come forward. Please state your name and your address for the record, please, Mr. Dunaway.
Stephen Dunaway, 24 South Roy, Oregon. I've been really quick. I decided that I've done 2 FOIA requests, but after what I watched on Channel 13, this one's public. I'm making a formal request of my law department to get back to me the attendance since council changed of everyone that has attended a safety committee meeting. And the fact that I have people on council that say they don't get information. It is so easy to get information from this city. Such as this. Very informative. A lot of important information on it. You would think that every one of you should have read this. I'm not sure if you have. If you don't have it, all people get it for you. They'll send it to you, PDF. You'll be able to take right off your phone. Print it out. You need to read it. This was a lot of hard work of the previous council. A lot of effort put in by the mayor. It came with another document in regards to how the taxes work in our city. I was flabbergasted to find out that of all the people that live in the city who pay a city income tax, that last year, 2023, $4,500,000 collected, which the city of Oregon didn't get 3.3 million of that because of people that live in Oregon go to work either Toledo, Harrisburg, wherever they go to work, they pay for that privilege. Just what I felt should have been my right as a citizen to have you people approve an increase in the income tax and then allow me and other taxpayers to decide. We live by the vote. They should have been allowed that vote. I do owe council an apology. I had some misinformation when I spoke in front of you guys last time about how much people pay in income tax. I found actually the average is about 1.5% around us. Because everybody else does something that is the most novel thing I've ever heard, and I'm calling on this council to immediately start considering it. If it's not mandated by the state, it should not be on my income tax, period. And I'm in reference to some wonderful things that we do in Oregon with our 2.2, for example, unlimited trash pickup. It's an unfair tax. I had a council person from the city of Savannah told me that they went off of that paying for it because it's an unfair tax. Because you have people that don't pay tax, that get that service, and it's really not mandated by the state. So it's fee driven. At $3.75 a bag. $87 if you have one garbage can in Perrysburg Township where my brother lives. If my mother in Toledo, it's $11.30 a month. And what we were asking to possibly let the taxpayer approve wouldn't even come to what, if you did it at $11.30. We wouldn't have collected that from people paying the tax. And what they're getting from the SFE in Toledo. So we could actually do everything we wanted to do with the fire department and the police department and finish renovating the end of the building just by initiating a fee. And I think we need to do that here in Oregon. Let's be like everybody else. It's not mandated by the state. Take it off my tax because other than that, I think I could start writing letters to Ghost down in, it's an unfair tax. You're taxing people. They don't have to pay it, but they get all the benefit. When 2/3 of our city is practically retired, it's an awful lot of people not paying a tax, a whole lot of tax going on a small group of people. It's not fair. And I just think that if anybody needs a copy of this, they can email me, I'll shoot them up. A link for it, like I say, get a hold of the law department. The gal that works down there, she'll be real fast getting it sent to your phone and you can read it because it took a lot of time and effort. There was a previous city council. And I don't see, I'm gonna say this again. And told, there's a lot of waste in this city. Mr. Bowman, you're doing a darn good job with a whole lot of waste because, boy, I'm driving all over the city. And I see an awful lot of pipe laying all over the place. I've never been asked to pay for that. For the new water lines,
The water rates.
well, but you see my point. We're doing a lot in this city, so I'm just, should I formally give this to
Yeah,
you?
it's-
Will you give it to the law department?
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Dunaway. Next person we have is PJ Caphammer. And again, PJ, if you'll just come up, state your name and your address for the record, please.
I'm just here about the last council meeting. I would like to say that Steve, Mike, and Joel, your explanation of how zoning requests go through the city, how everything works was spot on. I've done it multiple times myself in business, and there's no way to skirt that process. Absolutely zero chance you can go around it, or backdoor deals.
It's not plugged into the floor.
Steve did it.
Is it red or green?
It's not on.
There you go.
Now you're good.
All right, can I
Thank you,
get,
BJ.
start over? Anyways,
But Steve's got to come back up.
and kick the cord, kick the cord. So anyways, I've been through this process multiple times in owning several businesses in Oregon, Ohio. There is no way to skirt it. You go to planning commission, you get your plans. When I sold the turf center, I sold it with a stipulation that they wanted to expand. So I put it together because the sale would not go through if that stipulation wasn't met. So we came to planning commission, multiple public hearings. All the neighbors had a chance to say what they had to say, and it went well. The reason I'm here is I have after everything was explained, the whole process was totally explained. You have Beth on the other end saying that's not true. She's seen it multiple times, it wasn't true. It's very concerning to me when an elected official is calling out the other elected officials and saying what they're saying isn't true. I know for a fact there's no way to backdoor deal in the city of Oregon. There's ordinances, there's laws to protect, and there's no way you're gonna change zoning without multiple public hearings. She knows that. Her family has sold farmland that was converted to industrial and sold. Spartan Warehouse. She's been through the process. To say that's not how it's done, it concerns me. So, great job, Joel. Mike, Steve, you did an excellent job. I learned some stuff. You fully understand it. And that's just the process. I think most people here understand, as a public official, you've been through enough of this. There is no way you're gonna skirt it. You can't cheat and lie your way through it. You can't backdoor deal. This isn't new to Oregon. This isn't new to Lucas County. It's not even new to the state of Ohio. State of Ohio brings these deals to us. We're lucky. They get a chance to put the deal together. But before anything can happen, the public 100% is going to have input. I watched Home Depot, Stadium and Wind, or Navarre and Wind, or Loundorf. Marge changed her vote after the vote. Another public hearing, and the citizens came out. She tried to backdoor. She voted no, changed her mind afterwards, and that's when we had a lot of fun. And Home Depot ended up not coming because of that. But there's a process, it's protected, and nobody up here can skirt that process. Hopefully we understand it at this point, and it's not being said again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capaigner.
Mr. President, do I get to respond
Ms. Ackerman,
to that?
go ahead. You can respond.
I'm going to have to say that since I've been singled out the most, I'm going to take that as a compliment. I think I must be on the right track when the cronies and close friends and fan club of other council people and our mayor show up, and only them. I guess you guys got to get some fresh so it doesn't just look like vendetta material, because honestly, that's all I hear when you walk up here is people with personal vendettas against me. And you know what the issue is. And no, you know what? You're not the elected official. Now-
We're not going to make
Okay,
this into a
but-
dialogue debate.
All right, just
You can do
so,
that
because
afterwards, so I'll
I
ask you to
think
wrap.
that since I've been personally called out.
And I'm giving you an
multiple
opportunity to
times,
speak.
I appreciate that. I would take that as I'm going in the right direction. And if I'm touching nerves that have been embedded in this community for a long time, and I get some folks riled up so that we get some positive change, I call it a success. So thank you.
A brief moment. We don't
Well,
want to turn
I
it
mean-
into a dialogue.
Exactly. There's no vendetta. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're lying, you're lying. I'm also invested in this community, not because I'm friends with you or you or you or you or any of you. I own 3 houses in Oregon. I own multiple businesses in Oregon. I have millions of dollars tied up in Oregon. My success is based on, at least partially, some truth leaving this room. She was wrong. She lied. It's not a personal vendetta. Try not to lie and that won't come up. You've never seen a deal where zoning was changed under the table without a public hearing like she said she did. She's lying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you would.
It's probably a debate for another time or a private dialogue, I would say. We'll move on into our agenda for this evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming before us this evening. We'll move into the agenda. Folks, the first item on our agenda this evening is item 124 of 2024, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Law Director Melissa Purpura. Ms. Purpura, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an ordinance to enter into an agreement with the Board of Lucas County Commissioners and the Correctional Treatment Facility for the Regional Addiction Program, also known as RAD. The Board of Commissioners and also the Correctional Treatment Facility are authorized pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code to implement treatment programs. This is one such program that they have implemented. The City of Oregon has participated in this program for at least since 2015, if not before. The RAD program provides addiction services for convicted offenders and aids in the protection of the community by the rehabilitation of convicted offenders charged with criminal offenses in the city of Oregon. This does provide the city of Oregon with 2 residential beds. This is a lockdown unit. The program is 60 days, and one of the beds will be paid for from the probation improvement and incentive grant that the city participates in, and the other bed is for the amount of $15,576.38 for a per diem rate of $85.35. This agreement is effective July 1st, 2024, and ends in June 30th of 2025. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Council, any questions? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 124 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Pauloff.
so moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Pauloff.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Drake, moved by Mrs. Pauloff, seconded by Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Item 124 is forwarded to next week's agenda. Item 125, again presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Law Director Melissa Purpura. Mrs. Purpura.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is authorizing the recommendation to accept the One Ohio opioid settlement and enter into a participation agreement with opioid distributor Kroger. The city of Oregon has entered into 3 other agreements. This would be our 4th agreement that we would be entered into. This is a proposed joint settlement agreement with the state of Ohio. Under the national settlement, the Krogers would pay $1.2 billion over 11 years. This, however, is dependent upon the participation of the 33 eligible states. Ohio will then receive a portion from these settled amounts and make distributions to the political subdivisions, which would include the city of Oregon. These funds that the city of Oregon would obtain would be earmarked for the abatement of the opioid epidemic. And these settlements are geared towards holding the distributors, such as Kroger's, accountable for the mass addictions and deaths as a result of opioid use. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mrs. Purpura. Council, any questions on item 125?
Mr. President,
Mr. Drake.
yeah, I got a question for Ms. Purpura. Is there a reason why it's just Kroger's and it couldn't be a Walgreens or whatever's there at Wheeling and Navarre?
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Drake. In 2023, the city of Oregon entered into a settlement agreement with CVS and Walgreens. So we have already entered into that settlement agreement, just as we did in 2021 with both Johnson & Johnson and then also in that year of Cardinal Health. So as the state of Ohio enters into litigation with the distributors, that's when we see the agreements come forth to the political subdivisions. But yes, the city already entered into one with Walgreens in 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purpura. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, any additional questions on item 125? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 125 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. We have a motion by Mrs. Pauloff, a second by Mr. Reeves to move item 125 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 125 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Next item is item 126 of 2024, and this is presented again by Mayor Michael Safarian, Assistant Police Chief Ryan Spangler, and Law Director Melissa Purpura. Who's starting? Okay, Assistant Chief Spangler, please.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may do item 126 and 127 kind of jointly, as they do go hand in hand, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so council, item 126 is very specific in dealing with the maximum age for a police officer original appointment to the police division. So currently, if the municipality does not have an ordinance that governs an age above what is allowable by the Ohio Revised Code, then we have to follow the Ohio Revised Code. What we're bringing before you is an ordinance to raise that age from the Ohio Revised Code to what we are requesting, which is to a maximum of 41 years of age, meaning that the police officer candidate would have to get an appointment from this council through the city through the age of 40, so no older than 41 years of age. And so that is what item 126 is, that's all that is establishing in that. And then in item 127, because we would be asking for the age to change, the job description also would need to change, and that's what's in item 127. You'll also see, if you look at the exhibit and specifically if you turn over to page 2 of the exhibit, you'll see numerous bullet points that are listed at the bottom. And some of those are already there, specifically bullet point number 4 is the one that would be if council was able to pass item 126 as ordinance 126. That's where you do see that in there. You also see the first 3 bullet points. Many of those are changes that we have been able to work through with our union in our labor contracts and also with civil service, who has adopted all of those already. So the only thing that would be of major importance for council is certainly for us to be changing that maximum age. Just for a comparison to everybody, recruitment obviously is a very difficult task in the field of law enforcement and police officers specifically. And so we're all trying to be as creative as possible, opening up the largest candidacy pool that we can. And with that, the age is certainly an item that everyone is looking at as those individuals that go into the military, and we're very thankful for that. 18, 19 years of age, if they do a full 20 years in the military, they're getting out 38, 39, or 40 years of age. And we certainly would love to bring those on board, being a paramilitaristic organization that we are. Many times they come with experience in weaponry, chain of command, all of those good fun things, great morals, and conduct. So that is one of the reasons for that as well as all the other area law enforcement agencies are either eliminating the age altogether or they are increasing it to the age of 40 or 41. The highest that we've seen so far that has an actual limitation in an age is 45. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have on that.
Mr. President?
Thank you, Chief. Mrs. Paula.
Now, is this in regards to new hires, like right out of, going into it as a new career? And if not, or if so, what I'm looking for is if you have someone who's a police officer currently in another department and say they're 48 years old and you want to bring them on to Oregon, do they fall under this, or they have to be 41 years old to be hired in Oregon?
Correct. So the age limitation requirement would be for either a new hire or a lateral transfer in.
Okay.
So at least 21 years of age and no older than 41 years of age. And in reality, most of those that are transferring over are already going to be falling within that parameter anyways. And so, like I said, there's few agencies that are going above 40, 41. Mommy has 45. So
Okay. No,
they would all fit within that.
I just
category.
wanted to know if there was a lateral move, if this is included in that.
It would
as
be,
well.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pauls. Thank you, Chief. Council, any additional questions on item 126 or 127?
Mr. President?
Was that Mr. Reeves?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reeves, please.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Chief, would that also include like the physical fitness test and that too as well within that? I mean, if they come over laterally or at whatever age?
So laterally, they would not need to take the National Testing Network or the civil service examination, and they would not be required to take the physical agility testing. And the sheer reason for that is they are already state certified. They've already taken the state written examination, and they've already passed the state physical fitness standards that are already in place.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Chief. Council, any additional questions?
Mr. President?
Mr. Drake.
Mr. Spangler, so what if they didn't have a college degree? Because I know, kind of similar to what Kathy asked you, if they want to transfer and they have no college degree, they don't have to go through the physical, that would be okay?
Mr. Drake, Mr. President, if you look at page 2 of the exhibit, and specifically if you look at the first 3 bullet points, those are going to be the main items that are there. So the first bullet point certainly deals with the college education requirement, so they can meet that bullet point. The second bullet point has to do with serving in active duty for a period of 180 consecutive days. Or specifically for Mr. Drake, what your question is in reference to the lateral transfer, is that third bullet point. So no, they would not need to have that educational requirement if they meet bullet point number 3 that is in there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Thank you, Chief. Council, any additional questions? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 126 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Paulo.
so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reeves. A motion by Mrs. Paulo, seconded by Mr. Reeves to move 126 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 126 is moved to next week's agenda. Moving on to 127. Council, any additional questions on 127? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 127 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Paulo.
so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I have a motion by Mrs. Paulo, a second by Mr. Reeves to move item 127 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 127 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Next item on our agenda, item 128 of 2024, and this is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman. Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to enter into sanitary sewer easements with 6 property owners for the Brown Road Sanitary Sewer Project. All 6 owners have agreed to donate the easement, considering they are assessed for the project costs. The easement listing and descriptions are in Exhibit A. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 128 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Slander.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 128 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Slander.
Second,
Seconded by Mrs. Pauloff. We have motion by Mr. Slander, seconded by Mrs. Pauloff to move item 128 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 128 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Next item is item 129 of 2024. And again, we'll go to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, this ordinance is needed to enter into the construction contract with Taylor Excavating for the Brown Road Sanitary Sewer Project. Taylor Excavating was the lowest and best bid out of the 7 bids we received. We haven't worked with them directly, and we have checked their references. They've done a lot of deep sewer repairs in Toledo. They've done a very good job. We've asked them on restoration. They also said they were good at that. They do meet our best bid criteria, and with that, we are recommending them for this project. So again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions on item 129? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 129 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Slander.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 129 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Slander. Second. Seconded by Mr. Wolenczak. Motion by Mr. Slander, seconded by Mr. Wolenczak to move item 129 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 129 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Next item is item 130 of 2024, and again, Mr. Roman.
Mr. President, if I could, items 130 and 131, I'd like to present together.
Please.
That's okay. So item 130 would be to enter into a construction contract with Haynes Construction for the Otter Creek Stream and Floodplain Restoration Project. Haynes was the lowest and best bid out of 6 bids. They do meet the city's best bid criteria, and they have done a lot of stream and wetland restoration work in Northwest Ohio. The bid review and the project description and the project map is also included in Exhibit A. The project will enhance 2,500 feet of Otter Creek, stream bank stabilization, wetland plantings. We have stormwater treatment, again, where we take road drainage, route it through a 4-bay, and it provides treatment, removes sediment and pollutants. There's also floodplain storage. We actually remove dirt from the area as well, so we create more of an area to help on flooding. The city did receive a grant just short of 1.4 million from the US EPA for this project. And right now, with both design and construction, we believe we're below that grant amount. So 100% of this project is covered through the grant. On item 131 is needed for construction engineering from Manneken Smith. They are the designer of the project. We like to retain the designer for construction administration. I think they will create a sign for the public access as well. One thing in item 131, there was a typo in the title. It's listed as if it's an amendment to the design. It's really just an agreement for construction engineering. So just a note to make that change for next week if you choose to move it forward. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions on either one.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions on item 130? And we'll take 131 together. Any questions on either or? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 130 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Ackerman,
I'd like to make a motion to move item 130, 2024, and can I do both at the same time?
we'll do
Oh,
one
just
at a
the
time.
one, okay. To next week's agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Solander. We have a motion by Mrs. Ackerman, seconded by Mr. Solander to move item 130 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 130 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Moving on to item 131. Any additional questions on 131? Hearing none, I'll seek a motion to move item 131 of 2024 to next week's agenda. I'm sorry, with the known adjustment that the word amendment will be changed to agreement in next week's ordinance. Correct, Mr. Roman?
That's
Have that
correct, in the title.
Okay. We'll seek a motion to move that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Slander.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 131 of 2024 to next week's agenda with that change of the word amendment to agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Slander.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Drake. We have a motion by Mr. Slander, seconded by Mr. Drake to move item 131 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 131 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. That concludes all the agenda items we have for this evening, so we'll move on to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I have no report.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mazer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one item for everybody. I'll send it out in the weekly update, but I do have the first renderings of an inclusive park. We sought a vendor just to give us some examples of what an inclusive park would look like. So we have a rendering at South Shore Park. I can provide it in the weekly update, and hopefully everybody gets a chance to look at it. But at this point, we have the renderings. We're going to try to get some pricing for it, and then we'll go from there. So I'll just keep everybody updated as we move things along.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazer. Ms. Purpura.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Mr. Roman.
Just one item, Mr. President. Over the last couple months, I've been working with Menards in the fact that we do use their, or have used their detention pond as like a regional detention pond. And we had an agreement with Menards from 2009 to 2019 where we would maintain, cut the outer banks of their pond and would pay them half of their electrical use for pumping. But basically when the Brown Road system would back up, it would overflow back into the pond. So they'd have to repump it when the Brown Road system was down. It worked very well. And we've noticed in the last, so the last 5 years, the agreement's over. We haven't been cutting it. We've noticed the pond is higher than normal. We question, pump maintenance and things like that. So we've started these discussions with Menards, and I'm asking them, hey, would you mind doing a 5-year agreement? So we've drafted that. I have the ordinance drafted. I have pretty much a verbal agreement, but I know it's going through the chain of command at Menards. And so I actually hope to have it on tonight's agenda, but I'm still waiting for their official approval. So it may be on for I may ask for that to be on the next week's agenda if possible. If not, it would be on the following. So that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing from my standing committee from me, but at this time, I'd like to defer to Mr. Drake, if possible.
Okay. Mr. Drake.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. I just want to bring up, something that, we've talked about, some of us amongst each other when we ran into people. I know some of us have talked to, some of the pickleball players. And, in my opinion, and this is just me, Judge Petroff has served each branch of government in Oregon. I believe he started out in council. Then I believe in 72, you were the mayor. Then he became a judge. I know he helped with Mr. Reeves. He gave myself and I know Tommy Lambert a tour of the Perrysburg pickleball courts. And I just think it'd be fitting from all the comments I know I received from the pickleballers, that I believe it would be well-deserved to name the new pickleball courts. And I believe it'll be soon, it'll be complete, name that in his honor.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. I would just say that that explains a text message I got as I was walking in the front door about Judge Petroff there this evening. So that answers a bit of that. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Drake, for the recommendation. Mr. Reeves, anything further?
No, but I would like to thank Mr. Drake as well. So thank you. Good luck.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mrs. Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee. Excuse me. Judge Petroff, really, there's no greater person to have in that position. I'd also like to thank Paul Roman. I have a lot of friends who live on Forester, and every time it rains, the question comes up, why isn't this fixed? And every time we have to re-explain it and re-explain it. And thank you, Mr. Roman, for doing that and really being on the ball with it and getting it figured out and stuff. I know a lot of people there whose kids used to play in those puddles when that was all set up. So, you know, a lot of them liked it and a lot of them don't like the flooding in there. And it does empty. It empties within what, an hour, 2 hours, it's all emptied out. So thank you very much for that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. Ms. Rollins-Zach.
Nothing. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins-Zach. Mrs. Ackerman.
I attended the Ohio Municipal League Regional Conference on August 2nd at Kalahari. Didn't get to see the water park. That kind of was cruel. But I would say, if you guys can make it to these, I know people had to work. Paul had umping up north and everything. But we covered legislative updates, the Ohio ethics law, navigating crises for municipal resilience, unlocking new revenue streams, a guide for municipalities to secure grant funding, local government fund was explained, AI in the workplace, and unfortunately, they had it on their original agenda to cover the marijuana, the dispensaries and everything, and most of the people there wanted to get some information, but that one was canceled, and we were disappointed. But I would encourage you guys to go to it. I know those of you that have been on here forever, you know, the laws are constantly changing and there's a lot of new faces there, and it's a great place to network with all the newer people and some older people too that have been in serving as trustees, mayors, law directors, council people. The next one, if you can save the date, if you can get there, October 23rd through 25th at the Renaissance in Columbus of this year, October 23rd through 25th of this year. And so I hope I'm not sitting there by myself. I hope we can represent our city together. I want to say Mr. Petroff, Judge Petroff. I've called you Judge for so many years. I just don't know what else to call you. I don't feel comfortable calling you Don because of the one day, the only day I ever stood in that courtroom and I was pulling out of the bank on Navarre and going to turn west from the south side of Navarre. And I had to stand in front of Judge Petroff and I got cited because it was wet and my tire spun and I got broadsided and it was my fault. But I stood there shaking, I was like, oh man, so embarrassed. And he said, you are forever forbidden to turn west, go west, make a left-hand turn from the south side of Navarre Avenue. And I was like, oh. But anyway, he's a great guy. I admire him immensely. He's a role model. I'm just thrilled that people brought that up to several council people to honor you with naming the pickleball courts after you. And I don't know where we go with that. Do we have to make a motion? Do we have to, how do we do that, President?
Well, I would assume that we will make a motion or do a resolution naming that at some point in time if the city is amenable to that. I believe there'll probably be a follow-up discussion and just a polling on if we all support. So far, it sounds like support is there.
Okay.
And I think we just walk that forward with what that process is until we get to completion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. Mr. Slander.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee. I just wanted to reiterate everything that she said to us about Judge Petroff. So well deserved. Thank you so much for everything that you have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slander. Mr. Drake.
No report from my committee, but it was hard for me to do that because when I turned 16, I remember I was 18. I got 3 speeding tickets through the park. And I remember asking Bailiff Roberts if whatever fine you gave me, I forget what it was. I didn't have the money to pay it. I think my dad had to pay it. And he said, well, you didn't lose your license, did you? I said, no. He goes, you got off pretty good. So good job. And I'm glad you did all the work you did all those years. And I know the city appreciated it. My mom would never vote for you when you ran for county because she always liked you here in Oregon. I said, that's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. And I have no report from my standing committee. I would echo the comments. Judge Petroff certainly been a stalwart in our community for many years and a good leader within us. I would support the same. I would ask the administration to make that consideration. I think there is a pretty good consensus of support for doing that. Certainly was very active in bringing this project forward as well. So I think we would like to see that happening if at all possible.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor,
before you adjourn, could I go back to my report?
you can.
All right, and Judge Don Petroff, you're here, and I know your guy has always been short for words, but we'd like to hear from you.
Judge, come on up.
And I go back a long time with Judge Petroff and always had a mutual respect for him, and has always had fun in the conversations we've had.
I feel like I'm hearing my obituary,
It's better to hear it now.
I wasn't supposed
Are
to
you
hear.
still alive?
Yeah. People ask me that all the
Yeah.
time. I didn't know anything about this. I heard something about pickleball. I thought, I better get over here. Are they going to cancel the project? I don't know. So I appreciate all the kind words. It's been a privilege to work with the city of Oregon. And right now I'm really excited about what's happening because finally council and mayor are doing things for the city center. Since 1972, I've been waiting for that. And we talked about that, Steve, and it's exciting to see that going through. Thank you for all the kind words. I'm an Oregonian to the core. Actually, when I first came here, I was going to be here 5 years. My law practice and whatnot, we had other things going on. And next thing you know, I'm mayor and here I am. So good. Thank you very much.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I have nothing from my standing committee, but I do have one additional piece of business under additional business. I have a memo here from Angie Romano, which I'll have shared out to everybody. It was given me tonight as I came in. And I'll just read through the first paragraph and speak a little bit to this, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion quickly this evening. But from our fire department, under Ohio Revised Code 146, a volunteer firefighters dependent fund is administered by the Ohio Department of Commerce under the Division of the State Fire Marshal. This fund provides monthly benefits to eligible individuals such as surviving spouses and dependent children of firefighters that are killed in the line of duty or deemed totally and permanently disabled due to injuries incurred in the line of duty. Chief O'Brien has come across the information on here that we have not formed this committee over years, and we need to do so. There are a committee of 5 members that make up this board, this committee for the VFDF, 2 of which are elected members by the local authority, which would be council members or the mayor. 2 members are elected by the fire department or the volunteer fire department, and 1 is elected who is elected by Division 1, Division 2. The section can be an elector from the subdivision, but is not a public employee, a member of the legislative authority, or a member of the fire department. So 1 independent person that resides on that board. Seeing such, we do need to put 2 members from council or the mayor onto that. My recommendation is we have 3 members on the safety committee. Our chairperson is Ms. Kathleen Polliff. I would recommend that she be one of those individuals to serve on that committee. The other 2 members of the committee are Dennis Wolenczak or Steve Solander. I would ask if either are interested in volunteering for the 2nd seat, or we can open it up to all council members if somebody wants to volunteer. Strong feeling one way or another? Good.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I would, nothing against Mr. Solander, but Mr. Wallenczak, I would recommend him to be on that, just for the sole fact that he's been around a while with us. Plus, his father was our fire chief.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Counselor, is there any other objection, comment, inputs to that? So the 2 members from City Council that will serve will be Ms. Kathleen Polliff and Mr. Dennis Wolenczak. Chief, I don't know if we need to do anything more than that to formalize what you need from us. If so, please let me know and we'll make sure we get that taken care of. Thank you both for your willingness to serve on this. Looks like a very worthwhile committee to be a part of. Having done that, council, I have no other business before me this evening. Outside of Ms. Purpura, I will hand this down. That's the records request from Mr. Dunaway. I will seek a motion for adjournment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
I'm going to hold. Thank you. We're going to move for adjournment. We'll bring public participation back up. We'll all be here afterwards, but I do want to move. We got a motion for adjournment. Okay, we'll be here next week. Does it occur within the next 7 days? Because we did this last time
I was
and
gonna read it, and then I didn't read it. It's only gonna take 20 seconds.
you got 20 seconds.
Okay. I said I would read this. Through all my stuff with the fire department and the troubles with volunteers and things like that, I got this post. And it says, Mr. Dunaway, there is no easy fix. My husband was on the department for over 30 years. At the end, honestly, he was the only one to show up in the middle of the night. Sometimes all 3 stations would have been called out just to have enough for 3 or 4 person crew. At times, there were no one showing up. People don't want to commit. They want to do it when it's convenient for them. He couldn't do this without being like that anymore, and he retired. The volunteers basically pushed themselves out. The individual who wrote this is my first cousin, and this was in reference to her husband on the fire department for 30 years. Him and I had a discussion, and it's because of you and the fine things he said about you, pushing on people that have been on this council for a while, that finally someone stood up and said the words that no one wanted to hear. Damn it, enough is enough. And we're going to have a fine fire department, and it's going to be a full-time fire department. And he's very proud of what you did for this city.
Thank you, Mr. Dunaway. We have a motion on the floor for Mr. Reeves for adjournment. Council, do we have a second? Second by Mr. Drake. We have a motion and second for adjournment. Council, any objections to adjournment? Meeting is adjourned.